So this association between, let's say, migration and that dark side of smuggling operations. So can you elaborate on this, please?
Sure, thank you. Well, I think that this kind of migration now is suffering the consequences of the transnational crime. I mean, I'm talking about transnational and irregular corridors that in the beginning were used by transnational criminal organization and now is also used by a terrorist group, since they are not working together, but they are using the same scenery. So this is one of the main consequences of this situation, and it's really difficult to separate both phenomena, but at the same time there is no international regulation that are regulating both phenomena in the same way, in the correct way to solve the problem. So it's such a challenge because this is something new for us, because we knew both phenomena but separately, and now we have to deal with them together.
Okay, very good, very good. So there are current debates on whether immigration is associated or not, domestic or transnational terrorism. Okay, so I need your analysis on this. There's an association between terrorism all the time and migration, and this association is always in debate. So who's bringing the crime? Who's bringing the? I'm not gonna call it crime. It's even they call it terrorism. So are there any association between refugees, migration, and terrorism?
Well, thank you for the question, because this question is always a debate. There is no relationship between them, but the terrorism is using the irregular immigration for taking the advantages of the situation. I mean, when there is some people running away from a fake or a weak state, from some governments that are suffering an instability situation, this group, this kind of terrorist group, are taking them, so they are like a victims, and but the problem is that the hate speech just has the feeling that they are terrorists, but they are not terrorists. They are victims that are in the middle of the conflict and in the middle of this situation.
Very good, very good. Let's say, so there is so many, even if we're not gonna call it, we're not gonna call it the terrorist attack. We're talking about crime, domestic crimes,
okay.
Crimes in Europe in general. Like in your researches, have you find any relation between migrants or refugees with the crimes that are happening in Europe, like the normal crimes, like?
Well, for me, there is not relationship between the immigration and the internal or international crime. But for example, we in Spain, we used to have ETA, that was a terrorist group, that was like a national group, and now we are dealing with transnational terrorism. But the thing is, both phenomena are happening at the same time, and there is a huge perception. I think that the problem here is the fear to the unknown. So when people think that there is a group or people coming from different countries, they think that they are gonna feel outside their own culture, and this can be like a cause, a root causes for the, for example, radicalization. But even both phenomena are happening at the same time. There is no relationship. I think that everyone needs to feel an identity. I mean, all of us need an identity, but this is not the main question is, or the main issue is not the migration movement, is how to be able to integrate, how to be able to be a society that that welcome people, to create a multicultural identity. So that's my point.
There is some crimes that even not well, I'm not gonna call it crimes. These are terrorist attacks. There are some terrorist attacks committed by newcomers. Could you comment on that?
Well, this is a huge question and a huge problem, because I think that we have to think in the history. I mean, the diaspora, like long time ago, had created a huge migration movement, and this group have they grew up in some countries in Europe, and at the same time, groups like Al Qaeda or Daesh has been pushing some people to make some terrorist attack in the name of them. So we can see how there is some people coming to Europe in the corridors, in the illegal corridors that we were talking about before. And they are inspired by this terrorist group. We also can find another kind of terrorist that is called like lonely wolf. So I think that everything is related to the identity. So when someone needs to be identified with some culture or something, the terrorism or the ideology is really important, because these people can feel identified with some principles, and this is like the beginning of this situation. But we have to keep in mind that we have some risk, and we have some preconditionant and some precipitant. So it's like push and pull factors of the root causes of the terrorism. And there is not just one solution, and there is not just one answer.
Let's talk about the consequences of migration waves, like economic crisis or climate changes, and then let's go to the self-segregation or self-choices to stay into ghettos communities.
In the beginning, I have to say that, for example, when we talk about terrorism, the 95% of the attacks happening in countries that has like a weak state or has some instability. So this is one of the origin of this movement. So today we talk about a lot of causes, but this is one of them. So I think that when we are talking about how to solve or how to provide an answer to this problem, we have to keep in mind that even we are in Europe, we have to take care, or we have to deal with some political situation and political strategy outside Europe. So this is the first point that I think is important, because we cannot say, okay, we are Europe, we have this border, and we just take care of ourselves. So we have to cooperate with the countries that has this kind of situation. And from that point, I think that we will be able to develop like a better integration policies. And I think that it is so important to focus in social policies before, or as a step before the criminal regulation. Because now in Europe, everything is regarding about criminal law. So it looks like that criminal law solves everything, and That's not true. We need to focus on the social step, on the previous step, before to have to deal with the situation from a criminal perspective.
There is self-segregation.
Yes.
Let's be honest. Some communities, even you will see this in Barcelona, in Madrid, in Germany, you will see this in France, in the suburb of France, you will see this in other countries. They segregate. They don't like to integrate. Like, they are integrated in society, but at the same time, they're not integrated. Or there is some self-defense. There is some kind of bubble they're trying to. So some communities from Central Asia, from Middle East, trying to be in a ghettos. They like to be in a ghettos. They have their shops in the area, in the neighborhood. They have. I mean, what about that? Can we explain?
Well, I think that on the one side we have the ghettos, but sometimes this is a consequences of the situation that they are suffering once the people arrive to the place. I mean, if you feel welcome, you don't need to be just with the people that you are identified with. So I think it's a mix between create like a social and integration policies and to try to make the things easier for them also. So I think that we need to find this balance, because it's not easy at all. It's not easy for the people that are running away from a country that has such a huge conflict, or that has such a structural violence, and then they just suddenly arrive to a weird place. They don't know anything about that. So I think that we need to find the balance to avoid these ghettos or this self-segregation. So it's much easier just to say it's your fault, but I think this is not the solution. So I think that if we work on this from a social perspective, we can do something better with them, because we need to keep in mind we are not helping them, we are not working for them, we are working together. So we are just one society, and this is something that is for all of us. So I think we need to just forget the position, no? The role that we have, that we think that we have to take care of. No, we need to work together to create the kind of society that we wanna, in which we wanna live.